What's going on, everybody? It's your boy Jay Rich, back another episode of Across the Pod with my main man, Tom. Tom, international break is over. Game week 8 is upon us, and we have some decisions to make. Not too many, but mostly looking forward as to what's coming next. So we're going to break down who we're transferring in and the potential options kind of heading towards game week 9, game week 10. But how are you doing, my friend, and how did you enjoy your break?
I'm good. It's nice to be back. It's nice to have some actual football to watch at the weekend. I don't have to just sit staring at the wall. So I'm very happy. I think this week's quite easy. I think a lot of people are rolling their transfers. I think the easiest way for us to assess who to bring in is look at the most transferred in. And then I think there's probably only one or two at each midfield, forward and defense that I'm kind of interested in. The rest is kind of a hold and just see.
Yeah, for sure. So let's break it down. We will start, of course, with the goalkeepers. Not a whole lot changing here. We've talked about Pope and how his schedule looks very good going forward. Raya, obviously the top goalkeeper right now, especially with that Arsenal defense and how strong they've been. Donnarumma being transferred in a lot recently. Still a little bit unsure about that, especially with City's fixtures. And then Dubravka, we've talked about a ton as a great budget goalkeeper, still only at 4.0 million. Is there anything you really want to talk about here, or is there anybody you have your eye on beyond those four keepers?
I just don't think a keeper transfer is worth it this week. So I think whoever you have, just roll with it. I think Pope is still probably... Pope and Raya are the best two, so I think it's understandable that they're the most transferred in. Donnarumma, for me, I just don't think City are going to keep clean sheets, and for that price, I'd rather Raya. So it's probably Raya just pips it for me, but Pope is a pretty good second place.
Yeah, I feel like if you're putting in Donnarumma, you're just praying the City defense gets better, and it's more of a differential away from Raya, away from Dubravka, away from Pope. But it's just not a bet I'm making right now. It doesn't make a lot of sense. I'm not really sure why people are doing it, but all the power to them. It's just not going to be me. So let's get into the defenders, because we do have Timber and Gabriel leading the line once again for another game week. Senesi, your favorite, all the way back in game week 1 when you called him out. I finally brought him into my team. Big Dan Burn, who's been returning a lot, Mark Guéhi, and Gvardiol as well. Again, surprised to see Gvardiol with that 5.9 price tag. He is playing well, but with the lack of clean sheet potential, definitely a bit of surprise. Muñoz, who's been in our team a lot, Cucurella, and then some cheaper options further down the line. It seems like Van de Ven is a bit out of favor right now, even though they do have a pretty favorable schedule. Who do you like from these top transferred options right now?
Yeah, I think Gvardiol is, if you want to weigh into that City defense, you're better off going with Raya and use Gvardiol, because I think Gvardiol does have attacking options. Seem like last week, Man City have now reverted to just pinging the ball into Haaland, hoping he wrestles the defender and scores, and you get an assist from Gvardiol. And I do think he still is probably City's best asset in terms of ownership. We can talk about Reijnders and a few of the other ones and Foden going forward when we get to the midfield, but I still think there's better options than Gvardiol at that price point in defense. I think Timber, for me, I think Gabriel's number one, and Timber offers for a different, I guess he kind of is a differential, but at that price point, he's still quite expensive, and I think Gabriel just has better goal threat. I do think when Champions League comes around, you're more likely to see Timber and Calafiori rotate. So for me, I just want to not have a headache with it. And I think if you're going to have two of the Arsenal defense, I'd probably go for Raya and Gabriel, but I do think Timber is a good option. Senesi is fantastic. I'd always keep him. His progressive passes forward is the best in the league, and the way Bournemouth play, he's playing in Semenyo, and I think he's got the ability to score goals. Bournemouth clean sheets. It's a tough game to get away against Crystal Palace, and I own both a Palace defender and a Bournemouth defender, so hoping for a 0-0. But I think a lot of people are doing the same, and I think in terms of a Palace defender, Guéhi being transferred in, I still think Lacroix is better to get the DEFCON, but Guéhi has been performing. And I do own Muñoz, and I think he's fantastic in terms of he's basically an extra winger. So you're getting you got DEFCON and a goal last game. Yeah. And I just think they had him at the start and then they transferred him out, and they're trying to chase points here and there. Just if you want to, I use him as my fourth defender, but actually as another midfielder. I just bring him in and leave him for the season. He's going to get at least 5 goals. He's going to get at least 5 to 10 assists. And DEFCON and Palace are looking really good. So for me, I think I'm just going to play him every week regardless. I think he's fixture proof in terms of, he's scored against Liverpool in the past. And so for me, they're probably the only ones I'm looking at. Interested to get your thoughts on Dan Burn though, given, we're both Newcastle fans and both of us don't have him in the team. If Lewis Hall comes back, is it then a threat? Because Tau and Botman are playing so well. What's your thoughts on Burn?
Yeah, I don't think that they're going to take him out of the team by any stretch. But again, he's not really a left back, right? Like he's playing left back for the team kind of out of necessity because Lewis Hall, for whatever reason, is not in the team right now. But in a lot of ways, at least for me, I just don't know why I'd be paying 5.1 unless you just think they're going to get a ton of clean sheets. And so I did want to bring up the fixtures kind of going forward for them because they look pretty good. They have Brighton away, Fulham at home, West Ham away, which is pretty good, and Brentford away, which, again, also not too bad. They can keep clean sheets in those games, but beyond the clean sheets, I'm just not sure what more you're going to get from Dan Burn, and that's where at 5.1, I'd rather have a Senesi. I'd rather pay up for a Muñoz. You talked about Timber and Gabriel. Both are great options. I think with the way that Timber is priced this year versus last year relative to Gabriel being a bit more expensive, just give me Gabriel, give me Raya if I'm going to double up on the Arsenal defense. But I just can't quite get there with Dan Burn because while he can score goals, this team struggles so much offensively. There's just not a whole lot of potential there for me. They play for clean sheets, and they're always going to do that. He's scored a lot of points so far. I just don't know if I'd bet on it going forward. I think this team's gotten a little bit lucky defensively because they have been a bit up and down to start the year, and their attacking threat is so minimal. Unless something changes drastically, they're basically praying that Voltemate can score, and outside of that, there's just very little they're doing on the attack. But maybe with Gordon back, they can finally do a little bit more. I'm just not quite in on Dan Burn quite yet.
Yeah, so you mentioned the main man AG there that he's trying to call himself.
Oh, God.
What do you think? Yeah, like even as a Newcastle fan, the celebration, the gun is a bit cringy, calling himself AG. Thoughts on, I mean, we mentioned him last week in terms of being on pens for Newcastle.
Yep.
If they can start clicking, looks good. Scored for England, like vintage Gordon, cut in on the right, put it in the far corner. Haven't seen that for a long time. If he's on penalties, Newcastle's, like you just mentioned, good fixtures. Is Gordon, I mean, he's not even in the top transferred in. You can't even see him on this page, but is he a consideration for you?
Yeah, he's way down there with Grealish, with Minta, with Foden, right? Again, that 7.4 price tag is tough because you look to the top of the list, you're going to pay up for Semenyo. He's coming off an 18-pointer in game week 7, right? You can go cheaper with Sarr, who's playing very well. People are going with Saka. Kudus coming up back. I think he had another 2-assist game in the last one. Caicedo, he's just a weird price point. And that's the hard part with Gordon is that he's a differential. I mean, what's his right now? He's at 2.5%. So he's a massive differential if you have him in the team. But Tom, if I had to ask you, would you rather have Gordon or Gakpo right now? I think the answer might still be Gakpo because I just trust Liverpool to score more goals. And while there's going to be rotation, Ekitike versus Isak in the lineup and how much is Gakpo going to play is a concern. But I just don't know how much we're going to get from Gordon. And at that point, you're banking on penalties. And if you're going to bank on a player who's going to get penalties, I'd just rather take Ndiaye because he's cheaper.
Yeah, no, I kind of get that. I do think that Gakpo is just not a good asset either, though.
For sure.
But at that price point, I think I would probably go for an Enzo Fernandez. But given Palmer's probably out for a while, he's at the cam position on penalties. I think Chelsea, have good fixtures for the long term, and I think that's something that we can discuss about as João Pedro as well. Like their fixtures of Forest away, I think that's a good fixture right now. Sunderland at home's a great fixture. Tottenham, Wolves, Burnley, like the next 5 are great for Chelsea. So I think Enzo, but for me, the only other player that I think is better is probably Ismaila Sarr. Just seems like he's a streaky player. He's on fire. Palace playing well. If you don't already have anyone in the Palace, like if you don't have Muñoz, I'd consider getting assist last game against Everton, scored against Liverpool, and he missed the Sunderland game and West Ham games due to injury. He's actually returned in every single game since game week 2, it looks like. So we can ignore game week 1. But I think Ismaila Sarr is probably the most prolific player in terms of goal involvements at that price point. And if you want to go up, then obviously Semenyo's in everyone's team. Caicedo, I don't think can continue the output that he's been getting. He does get DEFCON though, so I don't
monster,
hate him as a pick. Yeah, so you're getting 4 points a game and occasionally more. Don't hate that. We said that from the start of the season. The only other player I'd really consider is Sarr to bring in, or Enzo, and then I guess Saka. But I own Gyökeres, so I'm not really looking at a switch. But I think if I could pick one of the two, I'd go with Saka, given he looks like he's on pens as well.
So then where do you stand with Reijnders, with Foden? We talked about them last show. Obviously, it's been a couple weeks since then. Where are
Yep.
you at with Foden? Because he blanked once again. 8.1 is the cost. It's very expensive for what we're getting from him right now. And Reijnders also did blank, but not too bad. It's still crazy to me that Doku, who also, I believe, didn't even play the whole game, only played 14 minutes against Brentford, is still being transferred in, while Reijnders, I believe, played over 80 and Foden played the full 90. Price is a big factor here, but how do you feel about Man City assets? Because the fixtures for them still do look very strong. And I believe for this week, they have the highest potential goal output projected for this week. Now, the fixtures do get rough beyond the Everton one, but I still like City going forward. It just depends on how you feel about their defense, but we're not really in on their defense anyways. It's all about how many goals can they score, and with how good Haaland's playing, it's probably a lot.
Yeah, exactly. I think you're right. In terms of the City assets and midfield, Foden for me is just too expensive. I do think he's playing well and showing signs that he could return to the Foden that we've seen before. I think if you own him, keep him. If you don't own him, especially going into that fixture run, I wouldn't bring him in. I think Reijnders is an easy hold though. I think like he's been really unlucky not to return alongside, the last few City games. Like it's, for him to only get 2 goals or a goal in that game, and then in game week 5 got an assist. I think he's actually been in a much more progressive situation. And if Foden would have scored or the rebound comes to him, I think you're looking at a player that's like 5.5 million and getting you points of a 7-8 million pound player. And he seems to play every single game for City. So I think he's an easy hold as well.
Yeah, so it's interesting because his minutes are dropping a little bit, but it's funny because he's been playing almost in that 10 role right behind Haaland. And there's so many times, we talk about Caicedo and can he really keep scoring these goals from outside the box, from deep? Like Reijnders is taking shots from at the 18-yard box or even inside, and they're just getting deflected or they're not breaking his way. And so I'm totally with you. I think at his price point right now, relative to Caicedo, I'd be willing to take the shot that he can continue to have a higher output than Caicedo, because it's really just, do you want to bet on the DEFCON or do you want to bet against it? And a lot of people are betting on the DEFCON because it has been so successful this year for FPL. But if you want Reijnders, who seems to be dropping in price a little bit and not as owned, now again, he's still 32%. People are bringing him in right now. But a couple more stinkers from him with the fixture swing, I think we may see some wild cards and people taking him out of their team. And at that point, he could be very valuable.
Yeah, exactly. Completely agree. So for me, I think Ismaila Sarr's number 1. I'd probably then
I like him a lot.
have maybe Gordon 2 or even Eze is in there. But for me, Sarr's number 1.
Yeah, I like Sarr a lot. And we talked about him game week 1 where I was like, I think you could be something here, playing in an advanced role with Eze moving on to Arsenal. We'll see. But yeah, I like that shout a lot. Bring in Semenyo. Don't mind Caicedo. Reijnders in that cheaper area. And Elliot Anderson, too, is another one that has still been playing well, but a lot of people transferred him out of their team. But Tom,
I like him.
He's been good ever since he didn't get DEFCON. I believe it was 3 straight game weeks. Now all of a sudden he gets DEFCON every single week, and I'm like, great. I took him out of my team, and I went with Reijnders instead, and he's kind of been playing much better. But we can move forward to the forwards here. Voltemade, of course, Tom, number 1, 7.2. It does seem like people have been pivoting from João Pedro to Voltemade because Pedro did drop from 7.8 to 7.7. But as you can see here, still number 4 on the list. I do want to start with a player that no one ever talks about except for you, and that is Jarrod Bowen. The fixtures do look good. He did return in 2 games prior to the Arsenal game. You love yourself some Jarrod Bowen. You talk about him all the time. How do you feel about him going forward at 7.7 million?
Make it sound a bit creepy. I've got Jarrod Bowen posters at home. I think he's great. I think he's a great asset. I had him at the start of the season, but I dropped him given how bad West Ham are. But I think all the signs are promising in terms of they've managed to sack Graham Potter. They've got Nuno in, who's a great manager. I think he scored 2 goals in games where his expected goal involvements is pretty low. He hasn't had a big chance in games and is still getting points. So I think the second now they've got the real fixtures to push on. I think Brentford at home, great fixture to come in. Leeds away. Leeds aren't great defensively. Newcastle at home is probably a good fixture as well for them. Burnley at home and Bournemouth away. So I think the next 4, I can see Jarrod Bowen scoring at least 2 or 3 goals in that run. It's just whether you think it's worthwhile selling someone like a João Pedro, who even he's got great fixtures. And I think, Forest away is a great fixture. Sunderland at home is a great fixture. And then they got Tottenham away, who I think, a bit leaky at the back. And then you got Wolves and Burnley. So for me, João Pedro, it doesn't make sense to waste a transfer when I think João Pedro and Bowen's outputs are probably going to be pretty similar. But then again, if you have someone that you don't think's performing that well at striker and you're looking between the two, I'd probably just edge Bowen over João Pedro in a similar way that, these transfers can't really tell the difference between them. So I think if I could pick my front three for this week for a free hit, for instance, Haaland's obviously coming in as captain. And then I think it's a really tough decision. I would probably pick Bowen second. And then it's between, I don't know. It's tough. You got Walter. It's basically Walter, Haaland, Bowen, João Pedro, and Gyökeres. They're the five that you need to pick three from. Yeah. So Haaland's obviously in. So then you pick two out of Walter, Bowen, Pedro, and Gyökeres. I think Gyökeres doesn't look great, but I own him, and the fixtures are good, and I think he'll score against worse sides. So for me, Gyökeres is an easy hold. I think Fulham away, Palace at home, Burnley away, Sunderland away. I think he'll definitely score, and at least surely he's got to score in those games. If he can't do it, then
if he can't, that's a problem.
You've got to ship him out for 9 million. If he's not on penalties as well. So I think Gyökeres is just hold him, see how it goes. But he's an easy pivot then to the likes of Pedro, Bowen, or Walter.
All right, so I do want to ask you one more question, because you talked about Haaland, who obviously we're bringing in, Gyökeres as well, another great option, depending on how you're building your team, whether you want 3 strong midfielders, 4 strong midfielders. We've talked about a lot of options there. But how would you rank these 3-4 type of options in terms of less than 8 million at striker? Voltemade, Bowen, João Pedro. You could throw Mateta in there. I like your idea of just swapping out João Pedro, who's 61% selected, for a Bowen who's 7.5%. So a massive differential there. And even if you want to go down to Voltemade, how do you feel about these players? Let's say price isn't a factor. You have 8 million to spend. How would you rank, these 4 or 5 strikers here that are under 8 million?
I would probably pick Bowen first, given he's a 90-minute man. He's West Ham's best player, and the fixtures have turned for them, and I think they're going to get a manager boost. He might be on penalties, but I think Paqueta is. So I think Bowen's probably number 1. I'd probably pick... the reason with Mateta that I don't really like him as an option is I've owned him this season, but he just has great chances to score and blanks fully.
Look at the XG, man. 0.92 against Liverpool, didn't score. 0.59 against Everton, and didn't score either.
That's crazy. And it's like up to a certain point where you can only say, is that down to the player rather than the stats? And I think, he's scored, 15, 16 goals in the season before, but it just doesn't seem to be clicking for him right now. Maybe that's because Elise is not here. Maybe that's because Eze is not there. So for me, I think Mateta, not super prolific. When he does score, he gets like 5-pointer. So even then, it's not even worth it. So I think for me, Bowen's number 1. I would probably pick Walter right now, given the form that he's in, playing in Newcastle side where he's the focal point, sometimes takes penalties if Gordon's not on the pitch, and good fixtures. I'd probably pick him ahead of João Pedro, because João Pedro, I know Chelsea haven't looked great with the red cards and going attacking, but even last season, I owned João Pedro for a bit, and he doesn't look super exciting. Like the returns he's got so far is like a header from a corner, a pass to like a long shot for an assist, a tap in here and there. So I just don't think, outside that West Ham game, look at like his output. It's
hot and cold, right? There was the 2 red cards and then Liverpool, but it's very minimal from Pedro, right? And it's easy to excuse the red cards. It's easy to excuse, all these various things, but we're talking about a player who has 0.03 XG in the last 3 games combined, playing 70 plus minutes in all those games. Like, yes, we expect them to struggle when they're down to 10 men, but at the same time, it's like, you're still the striker. You should still be trying to score goals and win these games for the team, because you're all Chelsea has at this point. They can't defend at all. Sanchez is terrible. The midfield and Caicedo are what's holding them together at this point. And Pedro's supposed to be the guy leading the line in Palmer's absence, and he hasn't been able to do it. So I get why managers are frustrated, and I'm totally with you here. Like, I brought in Pedro because the fixtures are good, and I think that if he gets hot, he can be great, but why would you even bother with a player who's 60% selected versus a guy that's 7.5 or 10.5%? Like, it doesn't make a lot of sense. You're not going to be gaining on the market and on everyone in FPL if Pedro scores or has a bit massive return for you. You'll only be gaining on the 40% that stopped playing months ago, right? And that's the big problem for me, is I think you should go another direction at this stage if you're looking to make a move, even going to next week. But if Pedro blanks this week, Tom, they'll be transferring him out like crazy.
Yeah,
right?
so
Like,
maybe
because that'd be 4 blank
yeah.
weeks in a row. And so you could go to a Bowen, you could go to a Voltemade, because he has scored 3 in his last 4 games, right? You look at all these returns, he's been great. He returns against Forest, who's been awful, but returns against Arsenal, obviously returned against Wolves, like scoring an international break for Germany. He's been playing great football right now. And I think with Gordon finally back, that could even increase the opportunities because he won't just be getting crosses from the right. He'll also be able to get crosses from the left from Gordon's side as well.
Yeah, exactly. And he plays balls in behind. He links up the play. So I think the better output for Newcastle generally, the better points you're going to get from Voltemade. And I think with the hot form that he's in, he's probably number 2 behind Bowen for me. And then Pedro. I just think if I didn't own Pedro, I would not be bringing him in. I'd much rather have Bowen or Voltemade. So I'm completely with you. Like, do you want João Pedro, who's a great ball carrier but does nothing? Or do you want a 6'6" German in the box who's going to score a header for you?
And I think that's the takeaway for me, right? If I was wildcarding or I was looking to rejig my front line a little bit, you probably already have Haaland in your team. You got to have him in the team if you don't just yet. But then it's who are your other guys? Do you go to Gyökeres? Do you go to Voltemade? Do you go to Bowen? I think even with Gyökeres in there, we have Haaland at number 1, has to be in the team. Gyökeres could be 2, but I'd probably go with Voltemade or Bowen. But then it would be Gyökeres would be 4th for me, and then Pedro. And at that point, Pedro's not making my team. He's just not, because there's not, you're going to go another direction. And the way you build your midfield with all the midfielders we talked about, there is some budget options. There's some more expensive ones you can go with, but it's so difficult to build a team with a Gyökeres, a Pedro, and a Haaland, and still gain places if you're behind. You need to be a little bit more different, and a player like Voltemade or even Bowen, because they're so low selected, can definitely do that for you, depending on how you want to build. But is there anyone else you wanted to get into, Tom? We touched on the goalkeepers, the defenders, the midfielders, and of course, the forwards as well. Is there any wholesale things that you want to discuss before we head out of here?
I don't think so. I think you've got me questioning now whether I don't want João Pedro in my team for long term, but the Chelsea fixtures are good, and he was good when Chelsea are playing well. Do I think Bowen's probably a better asset right now? Yes, and I picked Bowen over João Pedro at the start of the season because I did, and the fixtures are also good for West Ham. So I'm just thinking like, I don't want to waste a transfer for like a sideways move. But then again, I think your point is really valid. You know, he's 66% owned. The second he blanks this week, people are going to be transferring him out till the cows come home. So it's going to be like, do you want to just sack off João Pedro now and just get Bowen ahead of the curve? You're going to get the price differences and probably points differences this week. So I guess that's one to think about for me. That would be the only move I'd be considering this week is Pedro to Bowen.
Yeah, that's the hard part, right? So just for me, pulling up the fixtures quickly, you have Forest away for Pedro, and you have Bowen, who has Brentford at home. But then you have Chelsea goes to Sunderland, and Bowen has Leeds. So it's like Pedro may blank, but I think people won't necessarily transfer him out because they have the Sunderland fixture coming up. But then if you do make that switch and Bowen does return for you at Brentford, he goes away to Leeds the following week. So it's another great opportunity to score points. So I don't hate it overall. I think it is a pretty good option for a lot of people. It's just something to consider because I brought in Pedro for my team because I was sick of him returning and not doing it on my team. The same, of course, with Semenyo. But we're at the stage now where it's like, okay, everyone has him in their team. They just keep sticking him in because the fixtures look good. But at some point, we have to say, is there a better option? And that better option actually could be Jarrod Bowen. So I appreciate you always shouting out Jarrod Bowen because he's always going to be good for us at some point. And João Pedro is just simply too hot or cold. So thank you so much for tuning in. Make sure you like and subscribe. And as always, we will see you guys next week. We're out. Peace.